And there are many who've no reason to get out of bed, I suppose. People living in depression and people living in need and in want. And it's a great privilege in life to leap out of bed in the morning and look forward to the day, because you've got things to do and things to work at and things to create. And, you know, we're privileged. We're privileged.
Hello, I'm Ruairí McKiernan and welcome to the Love and Courage podcast featuring inspirational voices for change from around the world. This latest episode is a classic. It features none other than the legendary folk singer and musician Christy Moore, and I'm delighted that you've tuned in. I know you want to get straight into the interview, but please just bear with me for a few minutes as I want to tell you some of the backstory to this interview and also to just make a few quick announcements. First up is the update to let you know, as you may have heard just in the previous episode, that myself and my beautiful wife Susan have made the move from Dublin to the west of Ireland. We're living on the beautiful west coast of County Clare, and I'm doing more work now in Clare, Limerick and the Galway region, but I'm also still on the road a lot, so I'm in Dublin about twice a month and doing a bit of work overseas as well. So far it's been a great move. The West, as many of you know, is a beautiful, beautiful place. One of the most magical places on planet Earth, if you ask me. And we're loving it, especially the real tangible sense of community spirit. And Susan, or Susie Q as she's sometimes called, is busy with her music and also teaching meditation. And I'm finally getting a bit of headspace to do the final edits on my forthcoming book, Hitching for Hope, which has been in the pipeline for too long, perhaps a few years now, but I'm finally getting to sit down with the edits, so hopefully that'll be out sooner rather than later. And I'm also planning a bit of a roadshow of events and talks around the book, also exploring the theme of hope and change and possibility in today's society, and how we as individuals and communities can create change in our own lives, in our local areas, in our communities, nationally, and indeed in the world around us, particularly when we consider climate change, particularly when we consider some of the division in the world right now. It has never been more important than for all of us to stand up and to speak out and to be stronger and be more united together in standing for hope, in standing for justice, in standing for love. So that's what this podcast is about, folks, and Christy Moore is one of those voices, as you're about to hear. So, aside from the goings on and the big move west, plenty of other work going on. For those that don't know, I work in the areas of leadership, well-being, community engagement, advocacy, and social activism and social innovation, and that work includes talks, workshops, campaigning and consultancy, MC and facilitation work sometimes. I also run public speaking workshops and offer one-to-one mentoring and coaching sessions for people over Skype, and sometimes I work with people internationally, sometimes over Skype, sometimes face-to-face in the West Coast or in Dublin. And the idea is to help people find clarity and more confidence and sometimes more courage to activate those dreams or to find those dreams, to get the support with whatever it is you need help with. I've supported people recently who want to run for election, who want to launch campaigns, who want to launch businesses, who already lead organisations maybe facing some difficult challenges around leadership. To find out more about any of this, you can email me to hello@loveandcourage.org. Right, so thanks for bearing with me. We're almost there, but I do need to say a few quick thank yous to the amazing community of people that support this podcast and support my work, and particularly those that have chipped in to support the podcast, and that does help me cover some of the costs, particularly the publicity costs. And first up, I want to say a very special thanks to Kelly's Hotel in Dublin. Kelly's Hotel is a beautiful venue, and they gave us such a wonderful room. They gave myself and Christy an amazing room and great welcome, great hospitality for the interview. So big thanks to Kelly's Hotel, and thanks so much to AFRI Action from Ireland that came right behind this podcast episode, and to the patrons and supporters who chipped in at loveandcourage.org. That include, who have we got there? We've got Ronan Brannigan, we've got Paul Stassen, Megan Brown all the way in New Zealand, Eamon Stack from Include, Niall Doherty, my friend and previous guest, Chuck Collins over in Boston, Sophia Duffy in the UK, Lauren Murphy, Ronan Carl and Sonia Semcheshen. Sorry Sonia, I was worried about your surname there. I'm good friend Ronan, and his beautiful partner Sonia. Thanks for chipping in.
Stephen Kelleher, Seamus Hennessy,
Jonathan Woods, Erlen McGahan, Derry O'Donnell, my pal Barry Dempsey. Sorry, Barry. Great to have you on board, Barry Dempsey. I know you're a huge Christy fan. Also Lorraine Cook, Anne Keenahan, Seamus O'Reilly over in Australia. How's Seamus? Larkin Mulhern, Ray McGee and Simon Ward over in London, Patrick Cusack, Deborah Malloy, John Higgins, Sean McKiernan, Richard Lawson over in the United Arab Emirates, Coralie Moreau in Galway. How are you, Coralie? Sarah Brown, Dermot Curson, Olive Toey in France, and John Evoy. And as always, a huge thanks to Dara Twamley, who does such an amazing job with the podcast post-production. Thank you, Dara. If you'd like to chip in and support in any way, you can go to loveandcourage.org, and you can also help by spreading the word. You can share online, share with friends, and also sharing through WhatsApp tends to be a good way to share links and podcasts and so on. So folks, some quick background information about this interview that you're about to hear with Christy Moore. I grew up listening to Christy Moore, as did many Irish people, indeed as did many music lovers all over the world. He's a folk singer and musician in the tradition of Woodie Guthrie, and so many other greats like Woodie and Christy who write and collect and interpret songs that capture and communicate the struggles of the people, the emotions that many of us face and feel and need to find expression for, and also communicating stories and history and causes and campaigns. And for me, Christy's songs gave me an education and an insight into areas of life and events throughout history that I may not have otherwise known about. He's been singing and performing now, it's hard to believe, for over 5 decades. Think about that, over 50 years making and sharing music, as he does so well by bringing such warmth, depth, sincerity, and also fun to the mix, offered with a real sense of humanity and connection to the song and to the listener. It's no surprise that Christy has been named Ireland's greatest living musician, and he's recorded a staggering almost 30 solo albums, as well as many others as a founder member of legendary groups Planxty and Moving Hearts. Never shying away from the issues of the day, Christy has had songs banned on the radio in the past, not so much recently, but thankfully, and he has faced no shortage of criticism along the way, but he continues to speak out and to stand up in solidarity with people, issues and causes that need attention and support. And for me, that's something I value hugely, and it shows real leadership, and it's at the heart of why I wanted to interview him. And he was my number one choice of guest when I first started this podcast. I had a wish list, a dream list, and he was without a doubt the number one. And he rarely gives interviews, folks. He rarely discusses his personal life, but he nonetheless generously agreed to do the interview with me. As with all my interviews, this was totally unscripted. I didn't prepare any questions in advance. I made the decision to prefer to take the approach of being in a conversation that was in the moment, that was based on presence and connection. And so what you're about to hear was very much a free-flowing, genuine conversation. It was so free-flowing, in fact, that the interview started unexpectedly, with Christy announcing to me that he was going to sing a song straight away. And I was slightly taken aback, as I had my microphones fully set up and I was searching in my bag for something, but the moment just took off and pulled me into the most incredible experience, just sitting there with someone I grew up listening to, childhood hero Christy Moore, sitting there in front of me singing a cappella. It was a real moment, and it really caught me in a very deep way, and I hope that comes true in the interview. And the song he chose to sing was such a powerful and moving one that you'll hear by my reaction that I was literally lost for words for a few seconds. So it's an unusual start to a podcast to hear this song and the pause afterwards, but I hope you'll take the time and go into your own state of presence to enjoy this and to be part of this. So folks, this is a really rare and a really special interview. I'm really delighted to share it with you. I put a lot of work into these podcasts, and If you enjoy it, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, but please do rate and review, share, subscribe, donate if you can, support the Love and Courage podcast, but particularly support this episode. Share it out far and wide. I really believe this deserves to be heard by so many people, young and old, and indeed Christy does have fans, young and old, all around the world. So you can search for me on social media, Ruairí McKiernan, Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. Tag me and I'll share your tweets and so on. And listen, thanks so much for listening, for all your support, and enjoy the podcast, enjoy the interview, make some good time to listen to it. So without further ado, folks, here is my interview with the legendary Christy Moore. That's it. You don't need to think about...
Well, I had a thought.
Right.
I have a new song.
Yeah?
That was sent to me. There's a young guy in Nashville, and his name is Dylan Walsh. And I'm in touch with him, and I talk to him, and he sends me his songs. And about 6 weeks ago, he sent me a song. He said, there's a song I heard, he said, I think you might like it. So this song was written by a guy called Rob Corcoran, he's a Dublin singer working the London scene, the pub scene. And I've been obsessed with this song ever since. And I thought we'll start this off by me singing this song for you. Still they keep on ringing that bell through the blacked out windows of me bedsit hell. From their steeples high they still taunt me with all their smug impunity. Those bells ring with no guilt or shame, resounding time and time again. The truth was told, their numbers fell, but still they keep on ringing that bell. Through the blacked out windows of me bedsit hell, still they keep on ringing that bell. How I wish Justine was here, Grogyal McCree McCushla dear. When she left me years ago, she said she couldn't live with the demons in my head. Oh, sweet Justine, my Brixton queen, you never knew what they took from me. Some stories hurt too much to tell, and still they keep on ringing that bell. Still they keep on ringing that bell, as I count me coins for a bottle of Glen. I'll get a drink down me and I'll make a start. I declare to Christ and the Sacred Heart, all them sanctimonious pricks out there, from Letterferac to St. Peter's Square, from down the burning pits of hell, still they keep on ringing that bell. Through the blacked out windows of my bedsit hell, still they keep on ringing that bell. Still they keep on ringing that bell. That was written by Rob Corcoran, a young Dublin lad over in London.
Powerful song, Christy. Can you tell me what attracted you to it in particular?
Well, basically Rob has written something there. He's written something that an awful lot of people, I believe, and certainly myself, think about. And he's expressed something in a way that I find very listenable and very singable. And I performed it 3 times so far. I performed it in Scotland 3 times last week. And at the very first performance, at the end, people actually stood up and applauded it. And that kind of confirmed to me that my reaction to the song was you know. The fact that people actually got it on first listening and stood up. People don't normally stand up during a gig to applaud something. Very often at the end you get the old encore vibe, you know, but it happened a long, long time ago with the song Everybody Knew, Nobody Said, the song for Anne Lovett. That kind of thing happened, you know, where a song actually gives people a way of expressing what they feel about something, you know, because sometimes it's very difficult to have conversations about certain things.
Yeah, I can see the parallels there with when I think about Granard and I think about Anne Lovett and I think about some of the hardships and horrors that Ireland's been through, and in fact every country's been through.
Every country, yeah.
That we can't necessarily articulate those, and this is where we need song, isn't it? We'll get our tea sorted here. No, talk away, go on.
The tea is really nice.
Oh, the tea's good.
I thought when I saw the one tea bag we might be in trouble, you know. But
no, we're trying to negotiate some tea here while getting this show on the road here. So we'll bring the listeners into the tea conversation too, because it's part of the Irish journey is to get the tea right.
But when Lena brought the tea in and you discovered there's just one tea bag in the pot, I thought, Jesus, we're in trouble here. But it's grand.
Yeah, we're getting good hospitality here in Kelly's in Dublin, and you were saying you had different adventures here in Kelly's back in the day, or
maybe 40 years ago I came into this place once or twice. It might have been at the time of the Holy Hour, you know. I might have found my way into Kelly's during that terrible Holy Hour, between 2:30 and 3:30 when the pubs used to close. And I felt I could die of thirst in that hour.
And do you ever think back to those days much now, or are they just so far behind you that they're like another life?
Well, they're another life, but of course I think back. I remember lots and lots of adventures from those times. But I must say I've enjoyed sobriety. I'm a great man for the sobriety. I love it.
It's kind of underrated in the sense that my experience with alcohol has been that you're essentially groomed into it and conditioned into it, so far as that you can't even see that you're in it. And I'm not talking about alcoholism per se, I'm just talking about the culture of alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's until you see the other side of sobriety or whatever it is that we see this other world open up. And it feels to me so often that Ireland can't see that other world, where we blinker ourselves too much.
Well, it takes a while, you know. It's not realizing that sobriety is a wonderful thing. It doesn't happen instantly. I know it took me a few years to come into the light. I can still remember the first time I ever walked out on stage without alcohol or any other substance, and it was for me in my life it was quite an amazing moment, because for many years I thought I couldn't do anything without those what do you call it?
Crutches,
yeah. Those crutches, yeah.
Is that, have you any sense of that in terms of the national picture, that is Ireland a country that needs crutches? Like, can we get off our crutches?
Well, I mean, I think everybody needs help in life. I mean, everybody needs to be pointed in a certain direction. Everybody needs, you know, everybody is entitled to that, and unfortunately not everybody gets it. You know, I was blessed to grow up in a strong family environment, and even though we lost our daddy when I was 11 and the eldest of 6, and the family was shattered by that, we still grew up in a loving, caring environment, you know. And unfortunately not everybody has that privilege.
Yeah, it's true that not everybody gets the equal start in life, and that's why our politics and our policies need to reflect that, rather than this kind of narrative that's seeped in that we need leadership for people to get up out of bed early in the morning. There might be someone who actually can't physically get out of bed.
Exactly. Yeah, there are many. And there are many who've no reason to get out of bed, I suppose. People living in depression and people living in need and in want. And it's a great privilege in life to leap out of bed in the morning and look forward to the day, because you've got things to do and things to work at and things to create. And, you know, we're privileged. We're privileged.
Do you think that early sense of challenge or hardship for your own family, and I can't help thinking of your own mother and what she might have went through when you were 11, do you think that affected your consciousness at that age to imprint on it the idea that there are others out there? And I'm just wondering where this social awareness kicked in.
Well, certainly not at that age. I mean, at 11, you know, even the shock, there's a shock, but it's nothing like the imagined shock now. Because I can remember my first thoughts on being told that Daddy had died. And they're very odd thoughts come into my head. And I can remember the next day going to my mother and asking her certain questions that were... But I was 11, so it's understandable that I would ask ridiculous questions. You know, I got an understanding of it, and I've shared this before. I was driving down the road one day, and my 11-year-old son was in the back seat of the car. And I looked in the mirror and I saw him, and suddenly it dawned on me the effect it would have on him now, at this moment, if he was told what I was told when I was 11. And it really fucking hit home. That thing hit home to me that day, even though it was many, many years on, you know. So this is a very long-winded non-answer to your question, you know. It was a shocking experience, and it affected us all in different ways, and I believe all 6 of us are still affected by it, you know, by the impact that had on our lives. I mean, Barry, my youngest brother Barry, was an infant, and yet he has written a song about it. So to that extent it's impacted, you know. At least I knew Daddy. Myself, Eilish and Anne and Terry remember Daddy. Andy and Barry don't. But he still plays a big part in their lives, you know, because of how it impacted on our mother, and what she had to do and what she did was quite amazing.
Yeah, I don't know much about her, but I have a real sense of just this formidable, remarkable woman.
Well, she was from Meath. She's from a place called Yellow Firs in Meath. And her father was Jack Power. And Jack worked on the estate of a man called Sir Alexander Maguire, who owned this big estate on the banks of the Boyne. And she grew up in that environment and eventually worked briefly for Sir Alexander Maguire as a secretary. Something happened there, I think, something pretty bad happened there that ended up in my grandfather moving away from there. And God, I didn't expect to be going there today. But she met my father. He joined the Irish Army in 1939, and he was on manoeuvres down in Waterford. At this stage, Mammy was working in a hotel in Tramore called the Majestic, and that's where they met up. And they got married 2 years later, and I was the first of 6, born to Andy Moore and Nancy Power. It's lovely to talk about her, actually.
And Nancy not only took a hold of the family, by the sounds of it, but she was also a social person in the sense that she cared about the world around her.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, she was, after Daddy died, she kind of took over his seat in the town commissioners and then in the county council. And she was chairwoman of Kildare County Council for years, and she was on the library board, and she was on all kinds of different boards. And I think part of the way she she killed the loss of her husband, was she became probably a workaholic.
Yeah.
You know, and Daddy had opened a small. When Daddy came out of the army, he opened up a small grocer shop in Newbridge with no knowledge of that, and then he went into politics. And so Mammy went down and took over this little shop and made a much better fist of it than Daddy had done. And out of that little shop, she gave us all second-level education and helped us all right through our lives. You know, she was always there for us. And she sang songs as well, and she instilled the love of song and music in us all, and the sense of fair play, and she was always available to people in need of a friendly ear or a dig out, you know. So that was a great start for us in life, to be exposed to that kind of, that I suppose, social principle and good deeds that was in our young lives, and awareness of that.
It's good to look back and kind of honor the people before us in that way, you know, and just even to reflect on what made us who we are, I suppose. I'm just thinking about those early times in your own teenage life, or whether it be your 20s or whenever. Were there other mentor figures? I suppose mentoring is a kind of a theme that I've been thinking about a lot recently, is this idea of somebody possibly older or wiser, or not necessarily older, but someone who takes time for you to help you steer the ship a wee bit when you're at sea. Did you have other figures like that in your early years?
Well, definitely. Like from the time that Daddy died, there were people in the town who kept an eye out for us. And like, there were neighbours who took an interest in me or took an interest in my brothers and sisters, and certainly we were mentored in that way. People kept an eye out for us. I mean, I still feel very connected with Newbridge, even though I don't go there that often. But inside, in my mind, in my memory, and in my heart, I feel very connected to Newbridge. Every time I go to Newbridge now, I always walk around the town, and I walk up through the estates, and like the Newbridge that I grew up on only exists in my head now. But that's okay. Once I know that, I can walk around Newbridge now and very seldom meet anybody from my time. But that's okay. I wrote a song about Newbridge a few years back, and I realised now I wrote a song about a place that only exists in my memory, in my mind. But I'm very happy with the song. You know.
Do you want to give us a couple of lines?
I'd love to. I crossed the river Liffey Bridge and went down up the town. Be coffee's clock, 'twas plain to see how time was moving on. Past Neeson's and John Johnson's, Tommy Tokers and Cadine. How's it going, says Paddy Dolan, game ball, said the Skinner Bean. At the morning hoot there called the workers to the factory line, to weave the bells of sisal into rope and binder twine. Beneath the weeping ash I heard Jack Lawler's anvil ring. Back down the town in Commonses heard John McCormack sing. From Hawkfield and Kilbale and Chinatown and Rosie's Lane, scattered round the world we dreamt of coming home again. From the rocks of Sydney Harbour to the Bronx and Birmingham, to the Seven Springs, the Yellow Firs, back round the Furry Glen. That's the first two verses of it.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, it's whenever we think of Christy Moore, we think of, you know, Kildare, and there's a real sense of place about you, and with Barry as well.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, you know, with the song "The Bogman," and
I'm a bogman deep down. It's where I come from.
Yeah. Isn't it something about, you know, your roots and if you're rooted into your roots, you can't get blown off too far.
Well, it's amazing that both Barry and I would have great affinity for the bog. We never worked on the bog.
Oh, well, we don't need to admit that.
We love singing about it.
Yeah. You must have done a bit when you at some stage.
Oh, definitely.
You did enough to know that you didn't.
Yeah, I would have been out on the bog as a small boy.
Yeah.
You know, with my father's people were the Dowlings, and they lived in a place called Barnestown, which is actually right on the Bog of Allen. And back in those days, anybody who skirted the bog had bog acreage, you know. So that every year would go to the bog, and I can still remember them coming out with the tea and the bread out to the men in the bog. And all beautiful memories of a bygone world.
Yeah, I've similar memories. I did a bit of work with relations in Granard, actually. There's in the bogs around Longford, and also my grandfather up around Donegal and Fermanagh. He was a bog man.
Okay.
And
so you're on both those bogs? Were you in bogs?
Yeah, I did. Now I'm like you.
Yeah.
My ability in the bog now is questionable.
But you have the sense of it, nevertheless.
I have a sense of it, and I have a sense of opening a flask of tea.
Yeah.
And the midges, but the real sense of it is the sense of fraternity and camaraderie, and singing as well.
Yes, yeah.
And when we say the bygone age, you're right.
And the neighbourliness and the mahal and how people helped each other at harvest time or saving hay or, you know, people worked together and pulled together. Different world. Like, I really value the memory of when I started going out to my Granny Dowling's in Barnestown. There was no electricity there. They had no running water. Like, they did all the cooking on the fire. There was no running water in the place. There was no toilet. And yet they had this wonderful, rich life, you know, a very rich life. Very hard-working, long, hard-working days, but there was a sense of contentment as well, you know. The battery wireless and neighbours coming in to hear horse races or hear matches on Sunday in Mayhall O'Hare, and the old uncle over in the corner talking about years gone by, and it's beautiful, you know. And I know there was hardship, but looking back on it all these years later, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I suppose there was more physical hardship from what I gather of the past, but I feel these days we have less physical hardship in that most of us are sitting down for most of the day on a computer or wherever, but our hardship is a mental hardship. It's like a psychological war almost, and that they had this sense of community to carry each other through, and so hardship was, you could survive hardship or thrive in hardship almost.
And there was always work to be done, work that had to be done for them to survive. You know, and the work depended on the seasons and the months of the year. There were different tasks that had to be done, and whether it was cows calving or hens laying or saving the hay or sowing the barley or getting the spuds in or collecting the apples or making the butter in the dairy, you know. And there was so much to be done. Little chickens coming in, the old chicks would be kept in the little turf place beside the fire and would be looked after, and wild cats coming into the yard, and there's just so much going on all the time. And then drawing water from the well, beautiful spring water from the well, and still ploughing with horses. This man that used to come around a few times a year and take the sick hens away. I often wonder what happened to those sick hens. Where did they end up? I think they used to get £0.50 for a sick hen. And the order that came out from Newbridge every week, the little box of groceries, was the same every week. This tiny little box would go out. There'd be 80 gold flake, there'd be salt, and there'd be sugar, and a few little knickknacks. But everything else, they provided for themselves, you know. Bread, butter, milk, bacon, potatoes, vegetables, fruit. They had it all there. But it took a lot of work for that to be there. And then at night, sitting in the light of oil lamps, just looking in the fire, maybe not saying an awful lot. And if somebody visited then, a visitor would be really welcome, because they might bring in a bit of news. Or, did you hear what happened at Fitzgerald's at the Forge this morning, you know, or I met so-and-so down in Cribbins' shop this morning, or where now we're all transfixed by myself included, by news from all over the globe. If somebody falls off a bike in China, we're fucking talking about it here in Ireland, you know.
It's true. And we don't know what's going on with Cribbins down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always remember years ago, there used to be little snippets in the paper, like, would say, 6 weeks ago there was an earthquake in China. We'd hear about it 6 weeks later, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot to take in that we now can know about all of humanity's disasters all at once. It's in fact, it's too much to take in.
It's driving us all mad around the bend, you know.
Yeah. So you said that you're kind of partial to that. Do you get lured in, or are you good at? Do you know how to switch off, like as in that news button, or?
Well, I actually don't look at the news or listen to the news or read the news at all, because you can't really believe very much of it. I have better things to be doing than, you know, if something really serious happens that affects me, I'll hear about it soon enough, you know.
But you're also still relevant and curious, and you understand today's struggles, if you like.
I don't get that from the news, though.
No, that's what I'm wondering. So is that from your own inquiry? Like, do you set about that to make it your business to find out?
I suppose it's the nature of my existence, all right, that I am in touch with people, and I am. I don't really know the answer to that, to tell you the truth. I would have an awareness of what's happening at a street level, you know, in Dublin or where I live. I mean, I know what's going on around me, but I know it from people. I know it from looking at people and listening to people, rather than being told by some PR spin on the news.
I suppose that is not the traditional role of a folk musician, is to hear from the people and, you know, have that awareness, have that consciousness of what the people are saying or thinking or needing.
Yeah, I love that old idea of the ballad singers who went around singing on the street and selling their ballad sheets. And that's how their version of the news was, how the news was carried. Or you could have something that would happen in Naas, and maybe a month later there'd be some man on the street who'd be singing about it in Carlow and selling his broadsheet. And I know it's kind of a romantic view, and I don't know whether there's much to it, but I like the idea of singing songs and maybe giving a different version of the news. You know, given the version that I've encountered.
As you've done with, you know, with so many stories and incidents throughout history. For instance, we've been talking about the Stardust tragedy, and, you know, the news certainly had a view on that wasn't necessarily the view the families had of what went on, and that you've used your music to help others see that there might be other ways of looking at that. Yeah,
that would be. I have written songs for that purpose, all right, and I've sung songs from other writers. Like Mick Blake wrote an amazing song for 2016 called Oblivious, and Pat Quinn then wrote a song the following year called Lingo Politico. And I'm very lucky in that other writers who maybe don't have the same extent of an audience that I would have send me their songs and allow me to sing them, and that's a great part of it. I would view myself more as a singer than a songwriter. I don't write very much. I do interfere with other people's songs, mind you. Even the song I sang you at the top there, Ringing the Bell, I changed 2 or 3 lines in that, but with the blessing of Rob Corcoran. I contacted him and said, is it okay to say this here? Because with certain songs you've got to honour the writer. Other songs it wouldn't matter that much, you know, if it's a humorous song, or if I wouldn't be that worried about changing something there. But if there's a lot of emotion in a song, you have to honour the writer.
Has that impulse hit you recently, that seed of a song for your own songwriting, or is the tide flowing more towards you than through you?
Definitely towards me more. I mean, I'm continuously starting songs. I started to write a song the other day. I wanted to write a song about Callanan. You know, rather than write a song about Maurice McCabe, I wanted to write about Callanan. What happened to this man that would cause him to become so depraved? But not only so depraved, that he could be that depraved and become head of our police force. You know, I didn't get very far with that yet, but, you know, I have a lot of songs, at the start of a lot of songs down on paper. They don't finish out as much as years ago. I suppose years ago it was different, that if I started a song, I would stick with it until I... But if I'm working on a song now and I'm struggling, and if you send me a song that I'd love to sing, yours will take complete priority.
Yeah.
You know.
And how do you manage that in terms of, you strike me that you've remained open and generous and curious to other artists, other music, and that's a great way to be, but at the same time you can't have 1,000 people sending you songs. Did they
well, funny, I would view it the other way.
Right.
When you say I'm generous,
right?
I can. The main generosity here is the writers under the songs sharing them with me.
Yes, of course.
That's the generosity.
Yeah.
I feel completely privileged that people send me songs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do send me songs, but you can tell fairly soon if it's something which I can sing.
Yeah.
Some people send me very good songs that I still can't sing. Or they might be dealing with something, like since I received that song from Rob Corcoran, I've received a couple of songs, but this one, I don't need them, because this one says, well, I can't be singing 2 or 3 songs about the same thing, no matter how good the other two are, you know.
Do you have a sense of songs as... I'm going to struggle now to put words on this, but songs as creatures or energies, or, you know, I've heard notions that there's songs are in the ether and they're waiting for people to download them, or, you know, they have, like, they're a magical force of... They certainly don't operate in any linear dimension.
Well, certainly, I mean, there is a dimension to songs that is all those things you're saying. There's a spiritual dimension in that sometimes a song can be sung and it will linger on. I can still remember the moment I heard certain songs. I can remember where I was with certain of the songs that have gone deep inside me. I can remember the sound of the person who sang them. So that there's all kinds of different songs. The songs that are very fleeting, that are songs that will last for a week. I mean, over the years I've recorded songs that had quite an effect but a very short lifespan. But there's other songs never had any kind of great effect except on me, emotionally and spiritually, and they live on for me, you know. I can still get emotional singing a song or thinking about a song that I heard 50 years ago. The songs of John Riley, I mean, I still remember the sound of John's voice. I can still remember his facial expression as he sang them, and the emotion that was in it and what they meant to him. I remember that, and I will always honour that. I think it's amazing that a song which I heard a traveller in Boyle, County Roscommon sing 55 years ago can still the night in Sydney or in New York or in Dublin or in London. That the spirit that John Riley imbued in these songs lives on. So that's all magic. That's magic. You know, that's nothing to do with production or PR or recording or all the other paraphernalia. That's the magic and the beauty of the music and the lyric and the way John sang it. So I'm very passionate about all that, as you can gather.
I'm glad you are. I kind of feel that you've managed to protect that spirit of the song for yourself in the spirit of songs. I don't know, I have very limited experience of the music scene or music industry, but the little that I have come across, I can see how it could tarnish or toxify or disrupt the spirit of what it is it's supposed to be supporting. And I'm wondering, is there a sense that you've, I don't know, that, like, is it Kildare? Is it your home life? How have you ring-fenced yourself to keep things clean? Maybe
Well, I came through a lot of different eras in my work. You know, when I started off first, I went on the road in 1966, and for 4 years, getting on for 5 years, I just travelled the length and breadth of England and Scotland, hitching and travelling, and eventually got myself a little van. And then so that was the start of it. And then I came back to Ireland and had this success with Planksty, which would have been the first time I encountered the music business and the recording business. And then that all fell away, and I struggled on for another while, and then Planksty again and Moving Hearts again. And so I got to know an awful lot about the business, and I got a lot of kicks along the way, and a lot of things went arseways and belly up. But it came out through the other end of it with a kind of the one thing that survived from me was I did make some mistakes along the way. I did get sucked into it along the way a few times, and my head was turned, and there were things that happened that I wouldn't be that happy about now. But I came out the other end of it, you know, and the priority now is the essence. There still is the paraphernalia is there, but it's the paraphernalia now is all focused on the work. Everybody I work with now is focused on the work. There's nobody telling us to do this or telling us to do that, or we make the decision to do what's best for the songs to be heard. Does that help?
It does, yeah, and it suggests to me very much the idea of getting the right people on your team.
Oh yeah, I've got an amazing bunch of people working with me now. We're all kind of we're in the okay. I'm steering the boat. You know, I'm the one that picks the songs that we play, but I listen to everybody else's opinion on it. You know, and yeah, I'm blessed. I'm blessed.
Back to the music, can you talk to me about the song Burning Times? It feels like such an ancient song, you know, but it's sadly ever relevant today in terms of some of the many abuses faced by women in particular, and I think also how we treat the earth.
It's a powerful song, isn't it? Written by Charlie Murphy in California. And the song came to me from... I have to remember her name now. Wonderful woman up in Derry, an American woman living in Derry, sent the song to my sister Terry in Kildare, asking her if she'd send it on to me. And I was just blown away by that song. You know, the earth is a witch and we still burn her. The earth is a witch and we still burn her, stripping her down with mining and the poison of her wars. Still to us the earth is a mother, a weaver of a web of light that keeps us all alive. I love singing that song. In actual fact, I really should start singing it again. But see, you have certain songs that cause discomfort. And I'm a bit of a sucker. If I sense an audience is uncomfortable with a song, my sympathy are more with the audience than with the song. I won't persist, you know. And sometimes good songs fall by the wayside because they haven't been going down that well.
Have you anything else that comes to mind in that field at the moment? Or?
Well, I was playing up in Donegal a while ago, and a guy had come from Nashville to the gig, and he wrote to me beforehand. He said, "I'm coming from Nashville, Tennessee to hear your gig in Donegal. Is there any chance you could sing The Boy from Tamla Duff?" And I hadn't sung it for in public for maybe 25 years. And I've sung it every night since. It's kind of interesting. I'm looking forward to singing it in Dublin. See what happens when I sing it in Dublin. Sing it in Glasgow and they just fall into utter silence and respect. I expect in Vicar Street it'll be interesting to see. There might be a bit of rustling and a bit of...
Yeah.
So, but going back to Burning Times, I had a wonderful thing happened about 7 or 8 years ago. Charlie Murphy came from California to London and I sang that song in the Royal Festival Hall and sang it for Charlie, who was in the audience. And afterwards I met him and his partner and we sat in the dressing room for hours afterwards singing songs, and Charlie died a few months after that. So that was a real special version of Burning Times. But sometimes people get angry about songs, you know, and people will... Burning Times been a song in question. I've had communications verging on hate mail about that song. But in a way that kind of tickles me, because I'm glad it's annoyed them, you know, because fuck them. If it's annoyed them, fuck them. You know?
I actually quoted that song in an article I wrote a few years ago. It was actually an article about gender and inequality, and I quoted the song, and I got a bit of a hate mail back.
Did you?
Well, not so much personalised, but well, it was a particular columnist, let's say, who wrote back the following week, taking issue with it. And
somebody I'd know, maybe.
I'd say you could take a fair guess, as could many listeners. Certain perspectives in the world that take issue with an idea of history where women were trampled on and that
burned at the stake for
and that the Roman Catholic Church was anything other than benevolent. And you know, it's not that we're all out to attack any one institution and all its history. It's that if we're in the business of stories and truth and history, then we have to acknowledge what has gone on.
Yeah. Well, Anne Lovett caused a lot of hate mail, you know. Not a deluge, but it certainly did rattle, you know. But that's okay. I have to say that that doesn't bother me. There was a time it used to scare me a bit, but now it means it's working. You know, the songs are working. If people love them and hate them, they're living, they're alive, they're not just meaningless.
Do you have that sense of contemporary music? I know you've said in the past that you're a fan of. You feel that music is healthy and alive and in a good place at the moment. But how do you feel about the social commentary aspect of where music's at? Or do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, where it's at depends on what you're listening to. You know, if you're listening to mainstream pop music, there's an awful lot of stuff in it that makes me uncomfortable, you know. I'm going to go way back again now and just talk about the innocence of what a wonderful innocence we had growing up in the 50s. You know, we spent our days down by the river and we played football and we played hopscotch and relivio, and the world was a simpler, warmer, harder in ways place compared to what's out there now. I sometimes feel that the world is just fucked, you know. But then I meet you and I get hope. You talk of we need to hang on to the hope. And we do, we need to hang on to the hope.
Yeah, and like I get my hope from those that came before me, you know, and I think about the struggles of going back to Anne Lovett, or going back to the troubles in the north, or you go back to the 30s, or go back to the famine. Our people have been through worse
Yeah.
Now we have an ecological situation, putting it mildly, that we're hanging on the edge here. But for me, and this podcast is called Love and Courage, and it's not for an accident, you know. I
didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's about calling forward the love as the destination, but also the process. But courage is the fuel in the engine that will get us there, and that's through the darkness.
Yeah, I think courage the courage needs love though.
Yeah.
You know,
they're
you know,
they work together. Yeah, for sure.
And the love probably comes first.
Yeah. Because courage on its own can be a madman running wild into a battle, and he doesn't know where he's going, and comes out with his head chopped off.
Well, if you take the darkness that's in the world and the evil is in the world, very often it's fueled by courage that hasn't got love.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. So we need to know what we're for, in a sense, and the one thing that I think is a positive that often religion traditionally gave to people was a sense of, like, at its truest form, most religions boil down to love. Now, they can get corrupted or co-opted along the way, but that's the essence, I would feel personally.
That's the theory.
Of course.
It's not even the essence, it's the theory.
Yeah.
You know.
It's also the desire that humankind, or humankind's appetite has always been there for something bigger than just ourselves. That the spirit of the song, but it's the spirit of.
But it was there before religion.
I know. Yeah.
I think the pagan. I think the pagans. I'm talking about something here now I know very little about, but I have a sense that paganism was much more vital and loving than any form of religion.
I've no disagreement there, because at the end of the day, the way I see it is that since day one, people were looking up at the sun.
Yeah.
And saying, thanks be to God, there's the sun.
There's the sun.
And whether they called it Lou or Bridget, you know, and then, you know, obviously.
Well, a true deity. It's a real, live, living, warm deity.
But then in other cultures, they went on to call that, you know, Mary or whatever, through deities or through their own interpretations. And my sense now is that we just need to find a new way of understanding all that is. Maybe the new way is going back to the river and
maybe so.
Yeah,
unfortunately that has dark connotations as well.
It does, but it's my sense is your song, a lot of your songs are imbued with that sense of nature, and when you talked about your own childhood, the stories were filled with nature around them. And we happen to be at a precipice now where nature is the thing that holds the whole show together, but we're actually,
it's starting to struggle.
Well, we're pulling it down. We're killing it. But if we can reconnect with that, we not only save nature, but we save ourselves.
Well, I mean, the earth will totally outlive any memory of the human race. I heard a great thing recently that the only thing, if in 50 million years, the only thing that will be left of the human race will be plastic. And this American comedian said that really the whole purpose of nature wanted plastic and allowed the human race to exist just to give this plastic, and somewhere down the road the plastic will become an essential part of the survival of Earth. I mean, it's very kind of mad and crazy, but like when you see what's happening with plastic now, and mea culpa.
Oh yeah, they say by 2050 there'll be more plastic in volume of weight than fish in the ocean. So this idea that plastics and the planet I'm just curious about you on a day-to-day, Christy, and you said you're kind of part of it in the plastic culture as well. Like, who isn't? It's impossible to avoid to an extent.
It's not impossible.
You're right, it's not impossible.
It's not impossible.
It's hard to avoid.
You know, anyway, the question.
The question is, so when we think about the plastics and the planet and our role in that, I'm just wondering about your day-to-day and that idea of reconnecting with the planet. Like, what is your experience of nature these days? Are you out walking the fields? Are you in the bogs? Are you in the Curragh? Do you get plenty of fresh air? You know, how do you engage with it all?
Well, I like to walk, all right, but I don't go up the mountains, or I might hit the Curragh once or twice a year. Walk. My wife and I, we walk the pier in Dunleary fairly regularly. I suppose I'm imbued with a love of nature. With the amount of contact I have with it wouldn't be as much as I would like. And a lot of that was to do with, I suppose, the nature of my work. I work every day at what I do, and that's all indoor work. When I gig, it's indoor. When I'm travelling, it's in a vehicle. But like, I contribute as much as the next person to it, which the amount of electricity is too cheap. Electricity is too cheap. That's why it's wasted. There's so much contradiction going on. I mean, in the Late Late Show last week, there was a big item about the ecology of the world, followed by an ad for a competition to fly people to America for the weekend. And I just see that as ridiculous, you know. Air travel, cars, vehicles, electricity, plastic. Apart from what we're doing with our heads and precipice, I don't know. I hope we're not gone over the precipice, Rory. I sometimes feel we're way over the precipice. A few years ago, I used to think what we really need is some terrible conflagration that will do such damage to the earth that we won't be able to continue, but that we will survive. You know, something that will really frighten the big Jesus out of all of us, you know. But we seem to be able to disregard it. I mean, the fires in California, and it's kind of disregarded. It's seen as a terrible tragedy, and God love those poor people, but not why is it happening. The way the weather is changing, you know, but we don't seem to be able to. There are voices out there like yourself and like others, and we listen to when you're talking, and then we go out and buy a new flat screen television and a new car, and everything has to be quadruply wrapped in plastic, and on we fucking go. So I'm not a very good warrior in the ecological movement. I sing about it and I talk about it. But I hope I can do better. I hope I can do more.
Well, I think that's the challenge for us all, ultimately, is that sometimes when you look at these things, you can get a sense of guilt or inadequacy. And there will be people listening to this as well that will feel that. And I suppose there might be an element for me that, like, a shame can creep through.
Yeah.
But I would feel that shame is not a very useful emotion in terms of getting stuff done.
It's not, no.
And that's where the courage is, like, can we transform shame into something more powerful? Something creative. Something.
On the back of this, I'm going to do better. On the back of this conversation on this day, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do more. Or less. I'm going to do less plastic, man.
Don't do less touring, man. I don't want this podcast interview to have Christy quits touring on the back of. Yeah.
And Christy cycles to Glasgow for a gig.
Well, actually, you mentioned hitching earlier. I did a bit of hitching myself back in the day, and then a couple of years ago I did this hitching trip around Ireland called Hitching for Hope. And
Tell me about that.
yeah, is this where the tables turn? You're interviewing me now.
No, go on, I'd love to hear about it.
Yes.
Or maybe you've spoken on a previous podcast, haven't you?
No, not so much. Well, I tend not to. I mean, it's up to the guest to speak, not so much me. But the idea was it was 2013, and Ireland was knee deep in what we call a recession. You might call it depression. A recession for me is a word that doesn't fully capture what it was. It was a kind of a collapse and a destruction. But it was what it was, and I suppose like many people, I was at a stage where I was kind of trying to make a living, struggling, and had an existential question around hope for Ireland, as we just have for the planet.
Yeah.
And I was going, what's to become of this country, you know, if we go through these booms and busts, but also not just sell your people out, but then don't enact fundamental changes that are going to prevent it happening again. And I suppose the despair at the type and levels of leadership we've had, and I just felt all around me was this kind of despair and gloom and depression of sorts. Now, I don't want to overcook that, because I have a very good life and find people all around me. I see joyful things all around me.
Yeah.
But my work does lead me to see a lot of the suffering that goes on. And so I was asked to give a talk at the McGill Summer School on citizens' views of Ireland. And I'd spoke at that before, and I thought, well, there's no use me going up and giving another talk about facts and figures. If we want to know about citizens' views of Ireland, I better go and talk to citizens. So I decided I'd go on the road as the folk musician,
right,
to go and hear what the hell people had to say. And then I just thought, you know what, if I drive, the petrol's going to be too dear. That's actually how that started. And then I thought, well, there must be a different way of doing this. And the hitching thing came about, and it instantly awoke this reminder of me being 16, 15 in Cavan, hitching around wild and free.
Yeah.
And I knew that I needed that. This wasn't a project like to save Ireland or speak of McGill. This was about Ruairí needing to actually go on his own quest. And
like, would you go wherever the vehicle took you? Or
more or less, yeah.
And was it easy to get a lift?
It was very easy, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Which actually points to the idea that we think we've changed and we've lost something. And I would argue that we haven't changed that much. That the goodness and the kindness
still
and
there.
The decency is still there if you go on the slow roads.
Oh yeah.
So there are practical considerations.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's lots I could say about it, but ultimately, hitching for hope, I did find hope.
Good.
But hope has to be a personal journey.
Yeah.
Like, I can't give you someone else the recipe.
You have to find it yourself. Well, you can share your experience.
Yes.
And that in a way, sharing of experience is giving the start of a recipe. It's making people think, geez, he did that.
Yeah.
What could I do this? Or
yeah.
You know, we all the time are inspired by other people sharing.
Of course, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Which is why, you know, these conversations for me matter, is that that's all we can do is share, and it's not like Ruairí or Christy have all the answers here, you know.
No, not at all. Yeah.
We're all teaching each other, and we need to have more conversations.
Yeah.
And less shouting at each other.
Yeah. More love.
Yeah.
More love, more care, more compassion, more sharing. Yeah. Okay. One in Rudella in the Cowan.
Well, look at more love, more sharing.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. Christy, it's been an absolute pleasure, and before we finish this recording, I just want to say a heartfelt thanks for all that you've given to me through your music and your song, but also no doubt many hundreds and if not millions of people, because I grew up, as most people did, in a particular type of education system that didn't always educate me.
Yeah.
And a lot of my education came through music, and particularly folk music.
Well, like one thing happened in the last couple of years. I grew up in Newbridge in County Kildare, And there's a man called Frank Conroy. He's in the song Quinta Brigada. He was from Kilcullen, 5 miles away. I never heard anything about him or the Spanish Civil War in my education. Up the town in Newbridge there was a prison where there was Republicans hanged in the 20s. They told me all about Finn McCool, but they didn't tell me anything about the Republicans that were hanged in Newbridge jail 30 years earlier. 30 years, you know? So our education was very sketchy. But we're still here, Rory, and I wish you the very best in all you do. And thank you for pursuing me for this chat, because I know I've been a bit evasive. But I'm so glad it's happened.
Me too.
And you've given me lots of food for thought. And I wish you the very best.
Gordon Hackett. Thanks, Christy. Folks, there you have it, the wonderful Christy Moore on the Love and Courage podcast. Before you go, can I just remind you to check out some of the other great episodes on the Love and Courage podcast, and be sure to subscribe, rate, review and spread the word far and wide. You can find me on social media, just search for Ruairí McKiernan on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of that. And you can become a once-off or a monthly patron over at loveandcourage.org. If you want to talk to me about the podcast or any of my talks, workshops, mentoring, consultancy or campaigning work, just send me an email to hello@loveandcourage.org. That's hello@loveandcourage.org. So until next time, thanks so much for listening. Here's to you, to all of us, and to creating a world of more love and courage.